Hello, Pastor Eric here for Ottawa First Assembly in Ottawa, Illinois, and welcome to week 3 of our series, The New Exodus, and this is our midweek video. And if you have watched any of the other midweek videos, you know what I normally do is I take the chapters that I'm going to be covering on Sunday, I read them, and then I talk about information that I wouldn't have time to talk about on Sunday. This week is going to be a little bit different for a couple different reasons. Number one, the chapters that I'm covering on Sunday are Ezra chapter 2, a little bit of Ezra chapter 2, and then Nehemiah chapter 3. Now, the reason that I'm not going to read all of these word for word is because both chapters are just a big, long list. That's it. It just names families. There is one exception in the book of Nehemiah where Nehemiah points something out, and we'll talk about that, the importance of that. Now, just because they're long lists doesn't mean it's not important, or the spiritual reason behind why the list was made wasn't important. And that's really what I'm going to talk about on Sunday. So this video won't be very long. But I wanted to make one, because I said that I would, and two, because there are a couple of things I want to cover that I don't have time for on Sunday, okay? So if you get a chance, check out our Sunday services on YouTube, Facebook, or our website. All of those are Ottawa First Assembly, like .com, or Ottawa First Assembly on Facebook, Ottawa First Assembly on YouTube. So you can make sure to check those out. All right. It's good to be back with you another week. So let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll get into what we're going to talk about this week. So Father, you are so good to us, Lord. And Lord, you open up your word to our minds to where we can easily understand what you're trying to teach us and the things that you want us to learn. And so, Lord, I pray that this week, as we talk about sacrifice and service and obedience to you, Father, I pray that we would be willing to step out of our comfort zone and to follow through on what you've called us to do, Lord. In your name, amen. Amen. All right, so this week, as I said, for Sunday, I'm covering a little bit of Ezra 2 and then Nehemiah chapter 3. They're both just long lists of families, but what's more important than that is why the lists were made. And here's why the lists were made. So if you've been following the series, you'll know that Ezra and Nehemiah are all about 3 separate trips where the Israelites come from Babylon to Jerusalem in Judah. Okay? And the reason that they do that is because about 70 years prior, they had been conquered in battle by King Nebuchadnezzar of the book, of Daniel. And the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so eventually they find a king that is sympathetic to them, King Cyrus or Artaxerxes, and says, yes, you can go home and you can rebuild your walls and your temple. And matter of fact, I will pay for it. I talked about that a little bit last week. You can check that out on YouTube. The importance of that behind King Artaxerxes doing that. King Artaxerxes wasn't a godly man, but he definitely had fear of the Lord. Whether that was healthy fear or not, I'm not sure. But he definitely went out of his way to make sure that the Israelites could go and rebuild their city walls and their temple. So there were 3 separate trips, one by the name of Zerubbabel. He was in charge of rebuilding the temple. Then with Ezra, he was in charge of reconsecrating the people to God, which he did successfully, and it's really cool. It's in the book of Ezra. And then Nehemiah's job was to rebuild the city walls. Okay, so the overall message that I'm talking about on Sunday, as I said, is sacrifice and service. The importance of giving our time, talent, and treasure to the Lord. Obviously, time is a valuable commodity for all of our lives. And when we are willing to invest that time in the kingdom, we will always reap rewards for that. Our talent, obviously, it's the things that God has naturally gifted us to be able to do. And even those things that we're not that good at, but we have a little talent in, God can definitely use someone with little talent that's willing versus someone with lots of talent that's not willing. God will choose the first person every time. And then, of course, our treasure is obvious. For us today in America, that's our money. Back then, in Nehemiah and Ezra's day, it was money, but it was also cattle, oxen, sheep, things like that. That was considered currency that you could trade to get other things, okay? So as we look at Ezra, a little bit of Ezra 2, but mostly Nehemiah 3, what we're looking at this week is how they invested their time, talent, and treasure into rebuilding the temple and the wall and reconsecrating the people of Israel back to God. And so what I want to do is we're going to look at Nehemiah chapter 3 here on this video. And as I said, it won't be too long just because of the nature of the chapters that I'm covering this week. So Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 1, we kind of get right into the list here of the people that are rebuilding the wall. It says this, verse 1, Nehemiah chapter 3. Then Eliashib, Elishib, Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and hung its doors. They built as far as the Tower of the 100 and consecrated it. Then as far as the Tower of Hanel. Next to Eliashib, the men of Jericho built. And next to them, Zakur, the son of Imari, built. So here we have just a large group of people that were all working towards one goal. And obviously we can draw some cool parallels out of that. The importance of, the church working together as the hands and feet of Christ to accomplish what one person could never accomplish. And that's exactly what we see here in Nehemiah chapter 3. A bunch of people willing to invest their time, talent, and treasure into the rebuilding of the wall. So Nehemiah was a great leader, fantastic leader, as was Ezra. Nehemiah really stands out to me. What he does to get this wall rebuilt quickly is he takes each family or each few families and assigns them a particular section of the wall. And it is their job to build and care for that section of the wall. And then at night, Nehemiah would go around and inspect the wall to make sure everything is being built properly. Okay? So in building the wall, they had to also build entrances and exits to the wall. And these were gates. They called them gates. Now, in total, there were about 10 gates that were built into the wall. And they are named everything from Sheep Gate, Fish Gate, the Muster Gate, the Inspection Gate, the Dung Gate. What do you think about that one? I think you can guess what went on there. And that's where all the refuse was taken out, and so on and so forth. Lots of gates. Now, here's the cool thing about where we can kind of take this and get an idea of what the Lord wants us to learn is that it's this. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the wall, okay, and he was making sure that it was sound, the other important part of that, of rebuilding the wall, was the soundness of the gates. Now, if you remember other stories from the Bible, like Jericho, other walled cities that came tumbling down, right? Because the Lord worked supernaturally to do that. Well, a city was only as strong as its walls. And Nehemiah knew this. And so, what he would do is he would go out and inspect and make sure that these families, these tribes, were working hard, working well, and making sure that the construction was sound. If you've ever been driving out in the farm, out in the middle of nowhere, and you come across some dilapidated house or or barn. I'd remark to my wife sometimes, can you imagine living there? Well, Nehemiah wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to happen to the wall. And so investing his time, talent, and treasure into being a hard worker, into being a good worker, he was just being obedient to the Lord, as were these thousands of other people. Okay? And so that's something important to keep in mind as, if you go through Nehemiah chapter 3, it's just the hard work and the dedication of all these people, that they had different careers, they had different vocations, but they all stopped what they were doing to invest their time, talent, and treasure into the rebuilding of the wall. Okay? Now, just like all those people did that, it is important for you and I to be able to invest our time, talent, and treasure into the rebuilding of God's kingdom, right? Or the building of God's kingdom. And obviously with our time is a valuable commodity that each of us basically make bargains with every day. Well, do I want to spend time doing this, or do I want to spend time doing this? Now, the Lord calls us all to make sure to spend time with Him and to building His kingdom. And so investing our time into building God's kingdom is very, very important. And I'll talk more about that on Sunday. Our talent is obvious. Those things that the Lord has naturally gifted us with. But I also want to say this, because there's a lot of people in the church that believe they have no talent, right? They're not talented. They don't play an instrument. Maybe they can't sing well, or, whatever. And here's the truth, is that a lot of the people that were building the wall with Nehemiah, they weren't construction experts. They weren't master builders. Matter of fact, it doesn't list any master builders. It lists like a goldsmith, a perfumer. Matter of fact, it even lists one of the king's daughters, or one of the governor's daughters that was also helping out. None of them were experts in building. Yet God used them to rebuild the wall in a little over 50 days. That's amazing, amazing. And so God will take someone with a little bit of talent and much prefer to use them in a much greater way than someone with a lot of talent, but whose heart isn't bent towards the Lord. Okay, so it's important to remember that. And we see that in Nehemiah chapter 3, where, we don't have expert builders, yet they got it done, and it was good, solid construction. So the important part about a wall around the city, especially back then, was for protection, right? Nehemiah wanted to build up this wall to protect the temple, to protect the people in the city. But people have to be able to get in and out of the city, right? And so they built these gates. And all throughout Nehemiah chapter 3, we see these gates being built by these different families. The sheep gate, the fish gate, the dung gate, for example, is another one that, obviously that's where refuse came in and out. And so Nehemiah nightly would go around and he would inspect these, the wall and the gates, to make sure that they were sound, to make sure that they had good construction and would last. Because how many of and I know this from my own life, that, we can build up our spiritual wall in our life. We can build it up in our own life. But if we have one entrance point, just one, that is not secure, sin can easily get its way in there and can entrap us, can get us in serious trouble. And so now I realize that's taking a little liberty with this, but the spiritual point is very sound. And that is, it does no good to build up our spiritual walls really, really high if there's one area of our life that we haven't secured, that we haven't given over to the Lord. And so Nehemiah wanted to make sure, so he would go around and inspect and do those things. So sacrificing and service in times of our time, talent, and treasure is so very important. I hope that if you can come out to Ottawa on Sunday, I would love to see you there. We'll talk more about this. and for the third week of our series, the new Exodus. God bless you. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I hope to see you on Sunday. But if not, you can always check out our videos on YouTube, Facebook, or our website, Ottawa First Assembly.